Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chee-Tash. My name is Chris, and today we are continuing along our journey through the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. Today, talking about Chapter 10, How to Find and Fix the Causes of Your Bad Habits. This is all stemming from the second law of habit making, which is how to make things attractive. The first law, the one that we went over a few videos ago, again, that's the Q. That is all about making it obvious. This is going to be the final chapter from this section, and then next time we're going to go into the third law of habit making, which again is making it easy. But today, how to make it attractive. So last time we talked about Chapter 9. Chapter 9 was all about the role of family and friends in shaping your habits. We talked about the three very distinct groups that tend to shape your habits. We talked about the people who are in close proximity to you. We talked about the sheer numbers of people doing something. And we talked about very influential and powerful figures in life, in society, that can influence your habits. And we talked about how if you want to get different habits, well, then you follow or you belong to a different tribe. And we talked about how the tribal behavior will then tend to overpower the individual behavior, but to be careful about that because it works in both a positive and a negative way. Okay, so that was last time. Today, we're going to talk about how to fix and find the causes of your bad habits. So let's kick things off with an anecdote that James talks about. And he talks about he took this trip to Turkey. And he's got a guide that he's following around Turkey. And this guide invites him out to dinner with some of his friends. Goes out to dinner, is having a good time talking to people. And he finds out that most of the group that he is with at dinner has smoked. James himself says that he's never smoked, but most of this group has. And James asks some of the people there, or one of the persons there, how did they start smoking? And they tell him that, it was influenced by their friends. Again, maybe hearkening back to the previous chapter that we just mentioned in the introduction there about how people in close proximity to you tend to influence your habits. So yeah, he says, friends, they kind of had an influence over me. Everybody's smoking in a group of friends. All of a sudden you feel like you need to smoke, etc. But what he found interesting was half of all those people were able to quit. Most of the people were able to quit smoking. So he's kind of interested in that. Oh, how did so many of these people learn to quit smoking? And what he found out is that there was this book that they had read called The Easy Way to Stop Smoking by Alan Carr. And James actually says that he read the book and he found some good insights from it. So he found that in order for you to stop smoking, you have to start to realize you don't need to smoke. And then you start to realize that, hey, you're not a victim of the circumstances of smoking anymore. So, in other words, you're not, just because you have anxiety doesn't mean you have to smoke to cure that anxiety. It's not really doing that for you. And then also, he talked about how it's not a way to de-stress and it's not a way to be social as well. You don't need to smoke to do any of these things. And sorry, I got a little out of order here, guys. But yes, the points in the book were basically you're not quitting anything because smoking doesn't do anything for you. So it doesn't have to be something that's hard because it's nothing. That's the whole thing about it. And what James talks about is that at the end of the book, you actually start to ask yourself, well, why the hell am I smoking then? If it's not something that de-stresses me, if it's costing me money, if it's not really something needed to be social, if it's not anything that's relieving my nerves, then what am I doing it for? And what James found is that the author in this book is essentially inverting the second law. We talked about how in previous videos how you can use the laws to create a good habit, but you can also use the inverse of the laws to stop a bad habit. So again, what's the law that we're talking about here? The second law. which is to make it attractive. So if you invert that, how do you make it unattractive? Again, with the first law is the cue, cueing a behavior. Well, you got to make it obvious. That's the first law. So the inverse of that would be make it not obvious. Make it very, very not obvious. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to make things unattractive, basically. So first, James talks about where cravings come from, and they really come from two different spots. There's the surface level craving, and then there's the deep level craving. So the surface level craving is, I really want to go on my cell phone because I want to, find out what so-and-so is doing on their vacation to Bermuda or something like that. That's like maybe the surface level, is like the action that you want to do, like look at your phone or play video games, etc. But then there's a deeper level meaning to that. There's a deeper level craving. And James says how cravings are really a specific manifestation of something deeper. They have a surface level illustration or a surface level, manifestation, but there's a deeper meaning to it. So at a certain point, what you really want is the deeper thing. And what we're going to talk about here in a second is that the deeper cravings have been with us throughout our entire evolutionary history. So I have this example here. It's not that, you want to reduce uncertainty. You want to have social approval. You want to relieve anxiety. But you don't want to go on Instagram because it's evolutionarily advantageous. But what is evolutionary advantageous is what that brings. It's not the act itself of going on Instagram. It's the, reduced uncertainty. The social approval. The relieving of anxiety. That's the deeper level of why you go on Instagram, or maybe why you smoke, or why you crave terrible foods, etc. And James has a great quote where he says, habits are modern day solutions to ancient desires. Habits are modern day solutions to ancient desires. So obviously, early humans didn't have Instagram, and they didn't have video games, and they didn't have donuts and cupcakes. Maybe they did, but I don't think they did. And you're really attached to these habits because of the deeper surface level. And that's been with us throughout our entire evolutionary history. So what ends up happening is that you end up associating a solution with the problem. So what's the problem? I don't really have a big social circle. The solution? Go on Instagram. And then over time, they become very strongly linked to the point where you keep coming back to Instagram because of that deeper meaning, that social connection, or that social approval. So what James says is that our behavior depends on our interpretation of events. So you ask yourself, what preceded your habit? What preceded your need to go on Instagram? Was it the need for acceptance? Was it stress relief? Was it certainty? Or was it seeking love and friendship? And you can usually follow the behavior from there. And there's a quote that I think we're going to get to. Well, this is a good one too. To crave something means to notice that something is missing. So when you're craving, like a donut, sure, maybe you're craving because you haven't had enough food that day, or maybe you're craving because you just need to feel happy. And donuts, maybe ever since you were a little kid, have made you feel happy, really, really happy whenever you have one. You've associated it with positive moments in your life. James gives this example of, if a temperature falls by a certain amount, you end up grabbing a sweater. If it falls by a degree, probably not. But if it falls by 10 degrees, yeah, you're probably reaching for that sweater. This next bullet point, when you take the emotion or feeling out of something, decisions end up being very hard to make. And this is the important thing about habits, is that yes, you probably form habits. You can probably set a plan, and it's can be a very logical plan. And we've talked about steps you can do, the implementation plans you can do, and you can habit stack and stuff. And that can take some logical thinking, right, to actually put that into place and be cognizant of what you're doing. But at the end of the day, decisions and these habits are as much a factor of emotion and feeling, because again, for a habit to run, you need to feel something. You need to feel that emotion, and then your body takes over, and subliminally you run that habit just from that cue response, just from that cue. And again, with cravings, cravings are an emotional and a feeling that you get, and that's what makes you want to do a particular habit. I think that's what James is getting at here. So, how do you reprogram your brain to enjoy hard habits? Well, if we associate habits with positive feelings and experiences, how can we do that with things that are very hard to do? And James likes to say something here, and I've heard this throughout my life, is that there's things out there that you don't have to do, but you get to do them. So what James talks about here is reframing hard habits into something that you have an opportunity to do and flipping them into a positive. So you could say something like, I have to go to the gym, but it's, going to be just so hard and difficult. And you could say that, or you could say, here's an opportunity I get to break a sweat and feel pretty good, and maybe lose a little bit of weight and get out some frustration. So like he says in the book here, another example would be finance, saving money. Oftentimes people think that, I have to sacrifice a ton to save money. And it feels like a very daunting thing. But instead you can flip it and say, if I save money this month, I get to have more to spend next month. It increases my future means. So reframing hard habits into something positive is one way to do it. And this was another example he had in the book here about a mindset shift, where somebody who was in a wheelchair, and people feeling sorry for them. You're like, aren't you like upset you're confined to that wheelchair? And the person in the wheelchair says, well, no, I'm not sorry for anything. I'm liberated by this wheelchair, because think about all the stuff that I can do with the wheelchair. Think about if I wasn't in this wheelchair. The wheelchair gives me movement and freedom, and it's perspective that I don't think a lot of people think about. So James talks about one way, like a program, maybe not a program, but something that you can do to help with reprogramming your brain to enjoy hard habits, is to do this motivation ritual. So essentially you practice associating your habits with something that is enjoyed. And what this does is this puts you into the right mental state, gets you feeling positive, so that then you're feeling positive about the habit that you're about to do. And you can then find the right motivation when you need it. So a motivation ritual could be, I don't know, if you are on a sports team, let's say you play baseball, and a baseball game could be very stressful. Maybe you're a professional athlete, professional baseball player. You're in front of your home crowd. You got to play really well in front of your home crowd, or else the crowd will boo you. They won't cheer for you. And maybe it's middle of a playoff hunt, championship run, or something like that. So you have a certain ritual that you do before the games that puts your mind at ease, so that when you go into the game, you're feeling a little more positive about it instead of feeling negative. So that's one example that I just gave there, but another one could be, if you have like certain feelings that you get, like he gives this example in the book about the ritual that you do before you pet a dog. So he says you want to find something that makes you truly happy, like petting your dog, and then you create a short routine that you perform every time before you do the thing you love. Maybe you take 3 deep breaths and a smile. And now you do that 3 breaths and a smile for everything you do. So it kind of cues you and readies you for the hard habit that's about to come. You guys see what I'm saying there? Essentially, you run. We talked about something similar, I think, in With Winning in Mind, how you have a certain routine that you do before an action, like before a golf shot or before a pitch or before shooting an arrow. And you run that every time, and it gives you consistency, clarity. And in here, James is kind of adding on to it by saying you run this little more motivational ritual every time you're about to do a hard habit, and that puts you in a positive mindset to then want to do the habit. So you can do those 3 deep breaths and a smile at any time when you're stressed at work, or when you have a very hard training day coming up, a deadlift day, leg day or something like that. So that's what the motivation ritual is. Essentially, you're fixing your habit by reframing the association of your habit. Again, you don't have to do things, you get to do them. And if something is very difficult facing you currently, something is currently blocking your path, well, then have this motivation ritual that will bring you some little bit of inner peace and get you walking into that challenge in a more positive mindset. So, to summarize, again, to invert the second law means to make something unattractive. Well, how do you make it unattractive? Basically, you have to take anything that's associated as a positive for that habit and kind of flip it and realize how a bad habit is not beneficial to you. So if it's, smoking, well, smoking, you don't need it for social interactions. It actually costs you money. It's not actually relieving any stress. There's other things better you can do. So yeah, why the hell am I smoking? That's how you make something unattractive. But to make it attractive, you have to realize the deeper motivations behind the cravings that you have. There's the surface level, and then there's the deeper motivations for why we do certain things. Because again, habits are modern solutions to ancient desires. Usually what happens is that the cause of habits is the prediction that precedes them, and that prediction then leads to a feeling, and then you do the thing that you want, that you crave. It's all in all, it's why one person gets repulsed by a cigarette and the other one can love it. You can show millions of people a cigarette and people are going to have all kinds of different responses to it. It's because the cause of the habits is the prediction that precedes it. If one person got a lot of joy out of the cigarette, they're going to love it. If one person was repulsed, they had family members that smoked, they hated it, it stunk up the whole house, then yeah, they're going to be repulsed by it. Highlight the benefits of avoiding a habit that is bad. Again, we kind of talked about this earlier with smoking. You're basically highlighting everything that's wrong, that's unattractive about smoking, but you can do that with anything. About bad food. Is that bad food really bringing you happiness, or would eating healthy and getting regular exercise and losing some weight, would that bring you even more lasting happiness? I think the latter would. And again, you do this little motivational ritual. If you're about to embark on something very, very difficult, put your mind at ease and associate the bad habit with something positive that you have normally done the motivational ritual before. So that's going to do it, guys. Thank you very much for listening. That's going to do it, like I said, for this section of the book. We're going to move on to the third law in the next successive video. So the third law, again, make it easy. First law, make it obvious. Second law, make it attractive. Third law, make it easy. And with that, guys, thank you so much for listening. Tune into the podcast. Check out more of the videos. I've done more book summaries on this channel. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions. Guys, thank you very much. My name is Chris. This has been Chee-Tash. Take care, everybody.